Have you ever had a memory that no matter how much time has passed, that you just remember 100% clear? This memory for me was when I was 6 years old. When I was 6 years old, I distinctly remember telling my teacher that I was depressed. And I don't think it was because I was actually depressed or I was feeling some type of way, or maybe I was 6 years old. I just think I remember repeating what an adult had said around me. Very quickly, I was whisked off to the counselor's office, and I just remember sitting across from this lady. She had dark hair and glasses, and she was looking at me with a very concerned look. I just remember how that experience made me feel. I remember my mom coming in and them having a session with me and really trying to get to the root of why I would say I was depressed. For the first time in my life, I truly felt like someone cared about me outside of my immediate family. As I look back on that memory today, I realized that the woman I had been talking to was a social worker. A social worker that cared about me and all the other clients that she had probably had throughout her career. So today on the Clever Angle podcast, I sit down with my wife, a mental health therapist and social worker, and we're going to dive into the field that had a lasting effect on me to this day. Welcome to another episode of the Clever Angle, and I have a very special guest for you today, and we're going to be hitting you guys with some great content. It's a very great time in the McGee household because both of our kids are asleep. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my wife, Destiny McGee, and we are going to be diving into everything in the mental health space, and she's a mental health therapist. So what's going on, Destiny?
Hey guys, how are you?
I mean, I'm good. I don't know how you're doing, but I'm great. Ellery and Mara were asleep before 9 o'clock. So that's a win. And we're going to be talking about everything social work today.
Yes, I'm excited.
Okay, just so for everyone out there that's not really familiar with the field, what exactly is social work?
Okay, so we're just jumping in, I guess.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're jumping in.
All right, so social work, I actually got my...
She's prepared. You guys can't see her, but I can. She's prepared over here.
I got my little workbook out. So I'm going to name 5 ethical principles of social work to kind of set this off. So social work is made up of service, helping people in need, social justice, dignity and worth of a person, importance of human relationships, integrity, and competence. That's actually 6. So basically social work is, if you think of social, that's people. And so social work is the work of advocating for people, helping people in need in a lot of different ways. So I primarily work in mental health, but it doesn't have to just be mental health. There's a lot of different areas.
Okay, what are some of the other areas that you could be in social work?
So often social work is made up of micro practice or macro practice. And so the micro practice is kind of that one-on-one direct contact with the clients, which could be in a medical field, in mental health, providing resources. But there's also the social justice, advocating, just that kind of big picture policy social work. And so all of that encompasses social work.
Okay, so before we get any deeper into some of the different types of social work, let's go through the education portion. What is required for you to become a mental health therapist?
Okay, so I'll start before that. So to become a social worker, you can have your bachelor's in social work, or you can go on to get your master's or even your doctorate. But to just get your bachelor's, you would look for a college that offers a bachelor in social work degree. Once you get that, you'll have to sit for some boards, your licensed social worker boards in Arkansas. You'll be an LSW if you pass those boards. And doing that, you can practice as a paraprofessional. You can do a lot of work like in nonprofits or even in the medical field, I think there's positions that a bachelor's can do. There's several different options. Now, to become a mental health therapist, like what I am, you have to have your master's. If you're going to do actual therapy, you have to have a master's degree. So then once you got your bachelor's, maybe in social work, maybe in something else, then you would want to find a college that offers a Master of Social Work degree and get that.
Okay, so you mentioned being a paraprofessional. Do you have to have a bachelor's degree to do that?
I'm pretty sure different employers will require different things. I'm not sure if you have to have your bachelor's in something, but you definitely don't have to have a bachelor's in social work, but I think it's preferred and it would really prepare you for the field.
Okay, so we're not going to spend too much time on all of the education, but can you just take us through some of the things that you learned in your master's program of social work?
Okay. So in the master's program, I learned a lot about, I think, your own biases. So there's a lot of reflection, inward reflection, where you'll look at your biases and what populations you want to work in, what populations you do not want to work in, policies that affect different people, therapy techniques, interview techniques, diversity, cultural competence, just a lot of those big, not even things that, I mean, they're related to social work, but I think they're things that we really all need to be versed in right now.
Okay, so was it a 2-year program, 3-year program?
So I got my bachelor's in 4 years, which is pretty typical, and then another 2 years of the master's program. Some people can get their master's in 1 year if you get your bachelor's in social work. I didn't get my bachelor's in social work, so it took me an additional 2 years. But a lot of universities, if they offer a BSW and an MSW, then you can get your bachelor's and then do an advanced 1 year to get your master's, if that's full-time. Sometimes people go part-time and it may take a little longer.
Yeah, so during those 2 years, we were in the dating phase of our relationship. What are some ways that you balanced school and social in your social life, as I was stealing your heart?
Oh my goodness, here we go. Thankfully, I don't know how people do it with kids, but thankfully I was single-ish, started dating.
You were not single, you were off the market, 100%.
Oh my gosh.
I'm just saying.
I didn't have kids, and I didn't really work that much. I worked as a paraprofessional for where I was also interning, so that was ideal. And so I really was able to put a lot of my focus in school, thankfully. Now, I know some people who are having to work or have children and families, and a lot of people that I graduated with were, they graduated doing that with kids and families. But thankfully, I was able to just really focus on school, and I loved my program. So even though my schooling was hard, it was exciting for me, and I loved it. So.
Yeah, and I don't know if you mentioned this, but you went to UALR to go to social work school. So can you tell us a little bit about the internships that you did while you were there?
Yes. So I did go to UALR. Actually, I'll back up. I went to Arkansas Tech University in Russellville for my bachelor's. I did not get my bachelor's in social work. I got my bachelor's in rehabilitation science, and then went on to get my master's from University of Arkansas at Little Rock. And my first internship was at New Beginnings Behavioral Health, and I was at Jefferson. Was that Jefferson Elementary?
I'm pretty sure it was Jefferson.
Okay, I was good. There's like a million elementaries in Little Rock, so I was at one of the elementaries in Little Rock doing a school-based internship, and then my second year, met good old Tevin McGee here and decided to move to the old Northeast.
Oh, Northeast Arkansas. That's when your whole life changed for the better.
And I was at another school-based internship.
Yeah. So, okay. You graduate in 2 years and you're getting ready to go out into the workforce. So how did you make the decision on where you wanted to work?
Well, towards the end of my 2 years in grad school, I got pregnant. Tevin.
I know that. I'm just saying, like,
So,
as far as the different types of fields that you can work in, I was just
I'm getting there.
Yeah. I mean, you
So
didn't
I
have to
was
put me
pregnant.
on blast. Yeah, you were pregnant. Shout out Ellery Clark, but keep going.
So I was pregnant, and so because of that, that weighed heavily into my decision because I knew I was going to be, obviously having a baby soon, and didn't really feel comfortable traveling a lot or going in and out of homes. And so I decided to start out in the medical social work realm. So I started out in the hospital, and I felt like that was just a good space for me being pregnant starting out. And so I worked at NEA Baptist Hospital, and I was in the case management department. And so I did a lot of discharge planning. And so that was not therapy. That was more of the helping people find a safe place to return home to, making sure they had family to come pick them up after a surgery, or helping connect them with resources if they came in and maybe they were having trouble at home with food, or helping them get connected with a place that could provide oxygen in their home if they needed oxygen set up, or wheelchair, different things like that. So
how was it being out there in your first job compared to the book side of it? So how was it actually being out there and practicing the things that you learned over the last 2 years?
I think it's definitely different when you actually get out there and there's a real person face to face with you that needs help. The books don't necessarily prepare you, per se, to really just sit there and engage and just be in that space with somebody that's in desperate need. They usually don't come to a social worker until they're in serious need. And so when you're face to face with that, you're getting really comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so that takes some practice.
Yeah. So what was it like when you were diagnosing people for the first time? Did you have like some resources to help you refer to some of the things that you were encountering in the field?
So diagnosing people doesn't come until you start actually doing mental health therapy. So after I left the medical realm of social work, where I was mostly just doing resources and discharge planning, case management stuff. So when I left there, I actually went to community mental health. And so that's where I began, doing intakes and diagnosing. So I'll kind of talk people through. If you're listening, you may not know what the process looks like. So if you decide, hey, I think I need a therapist for some reason, you're going to go to a place. There's a lot of different places. Community mental health is where I work, but there's also private agencies. So you're going to go in, and the first session is going to be an intake or a diagnostic assessment. Same thing. So you're going to sit down and do a full biopsychosocial questionnaire of probably some paperwork, and then a face-to-face interview with a therapist or clinician of some sort. And at the end of that, due to insurances requiring it, you're going to have a diagnosis. Now, if you don't have enough there to be diagnosed, then you're probably going to, be told that you don't need services. But for the most part, we're looking to match you with the criteria that are met for a diagnosis. And those can be found in the DSM, and those get updated regularly. So right now we're on the DSM-5. So for your question of what resources I use to help me diagnose, the DSM is a compilation of all the possible diagnoses that someone could come in with for mental health. And so we learn those in school. But yes, I do have a large one and a pocket one that I keep with me at my desk whenever I'm doing my intakes so that I can diagnose someone properly.
Okay, so take me through the transition from moving from like the medical case management type position that you had at NEA to moving into community mental health.
Yeah, so it's way different. I actually wanted to be in mental health, so I was really glad whenever I was able to move into that. Nothing against, I think some people are really great at the discharge planning, but I had this desire to follow them longer. When they were in the hospital, I might only see them for 2 or 3 days, maybe 7. And then I don't really know what happens. There's not a lot of follow-up because I'm connecting them to who they're going to follow up with, and then I don't really see them again. And so I love the fact that my clients now, I get to see them day in, day out, and get to see progress and, be with them longer than a couple days while they're in the hospital.
So the position that you had that was in the case management realm, was that a position that you could do as a bachelor level, or did it still require a master's level?
So a lot of those case management positions with a bachelor's degree, I think you can get positions like that. There were some bachelor's level, bachelor's level people that worked there. And so a lot of places are moving towards preferring a master's, but there's definitely some case management jobs that you can get with a bachelor's.
Okay, so what was it like at your first community health job? So what kind of population did you work with, and just take us through that a little bit?
Yeah. So I kind of dove in head first. Not going to say I recommend it, not going to say I don't. But I dove into a locked unit of severely mentally ill men in the criminal justice system.
So was this a type of population that you encountered in the textbook in school?
Absolutely not. Well, these are the ones where you would read the case studies or you would see the videos, but never actually meet the people.
So I don't even remember this. So how did you even get hooked up with this job? How did you go from, hospital setting to I want to work with a lockdown unit 24/7 of mentally ill men?
Yeah. I don't know what even happened, but I had the baby. And then after I had the baby, that's when I was kind of ready to go move into the mental health part of it. And so I was just looking for positions, and this one was open. I went to an interview and I was like, all right, let's do this. I didn't even really know what I was getting into, but I was primarily working with men that had schizophrenia or bipolar disorder with psychotic features. And so it was heavy, heavy, heavy. And it was the best learning experience I've ever had. I was able to fully get to know people that are typically judged because of who they are, what they've done, or what diagnosis they have. And I was able to truly get to know them. And so now I think that helps me even more relate to the clients that I work with, that a person is a person, regardless of the diagnosis. And so I learned that so much in that first really heavy job.
Yeah. So just take us through what a typical day at that position was like for you.
So in an inpatient setting, it's a little different because they're there all the time. And so you see those same clients day in and day out. So, I was kind of there for individual therapy, group therapy. They ate lunch there, they slept there. So I got to see a lot of a very few amount of clients.
Yeah, so you mentioned individual therapy and group therapy. Are those the only types of therapy that you did with them, or are there other types of therapy in the mental health realm?
So typically you're going to see, when you first come in, you're going to do an intake. And from the intake, you're going to do a treatment plan. So that's where you're going to write some goals and some objectives that you have for, whatever it is that you're wanting to treat or that you're needing help with. And you're going to do that collaboratively with your therapist. And then depending on what you need with these guys, I was doing individual therapy and group therapy, occasionally family therapy if I had some family involvement. But right now I work in an outpatient setting, and so I'm frequently doing family therapy and individual therapy.
Okay, so what was it like? What was the end goal for these guys at this unit?
So I was trying to help them transition back into community. So if you're in any inpatient setting, the goal is typically for you to get out back into community, into a least restrictive environment.
Okay, so was this the most restrictive environment, and then they would just transition to a less stricter environment?
Mm-hmm. So typically the most restrictive environment in Arkansas is going to be the Arkansas State Hospital in Little Rock. So if you're wanting to go into social work and work in the most high need setting, I don't even know if high need, but or a crisis unit. So if you're working in a crisis unit or any kind of inpatient, either whether long-term, residential, or an acute unit, you're going to be with the most high need population. So they either need, they're either a threat to themselves or others, or they're severely psychotic, but for some reason they cannot be out in society safely. Now, as you work your way down, you'll get to where like right now, I'm in an outpatient setting. And so they're living at home in a normal home environment or in a foster home, but they can safely be out and come weekly or bi-weekly for sessions.
So what is it that drove you to become a social worker? Like, what is it that you love about this field?
Well, tracing back to college, I was trying to figure out something in the medical field just because that was driven into my head that you got to go into the medical field, And I wasn't really sure where I fit in until after I had done a few occupational therapy observation hours. My heart was just leading towards, I was less interested in the fine motor skills and the things that the OT was trying to show me. And I found myself asking, well, what are they doing at home? And what are the parents like? And, all these social work questions. And so I just kind of landed in that.
Okay. So what are some of the other types of populations that you can work with if you're in the social work field?
So if you're wanting to be a social worker, I would strongly encourage you to, figure out what you're passionate about and what about people you're wanting to help them with, whether that's the medical aspect that I talked about at first, or if that's mental health therapy. Even within mental health, you can work with adults, you can work with children. Right now, I work in an outpatient setting with children. There's inpatient, outpatient, and beyond that, you may want to work in writing policies, or you may want to work in a nonprofit. You may want to start a nonprofit or work in adoption. There's a lot of things that you can do in social work. And that's what I really like about it is that, if you get set in something and you decide maybe this isn't a good fit for me, I don't think it's a total career path shift. I think you can just kind of find a different niche in social work that works for you.
Yeah. So how long exactly were you at this restrictive unit, and what did your next job opportunity look like?
So I was there for about a year, and from there I decided that my personality is maybe different than some, where I kind of, after a while, I decide, I need something a little more open and for me to be a little more creative. And these guys were not interested in my Pinterest board activities and all the things I'm super excited about, my group ideas and all this. They were kind of over me. And so I just wanted to have a little more fun, I guess, and not drive them crazy. And so I moved into children's. And so that's where I can make the posters and the Pinterest board activities, and they get all excited about it like I do.
Yeah, so just take us through what it's like working with kids now. I would imagine that it's a lot different than working at the restrictive unit. So what age kids do you work with? Have you worked with, high schoolers? Take us through that a little bit.
So now I work with typically about age 4 or 5 to, I would say 18, but I do have a few that are 21, 22, maybe if there's still a need for them to be in our, on our children's side, if they're still seeing our psychiatrist. And
yeah, just take us through what it's like. Are the treatment plans different working with kids than working with the adults, or what are some of the type of therapies that you use with the kids?
Yeah, so it's ultimately the same process as far as they're going to come in and get an intake. The parents are going to be involved. I work in the clinic, so if you're wanting to work in the school, it's a little bit different, but you would be school-based. And do most of your work at the school, have the parents come up to the school. But I work in the clinic in an office. And so the parents are going to bring the kids in, and we're going to do an intake and do a treatment plan. And then I'm going to see the kids either one-on-one for individual therapy and then have a lot of family therapy to back that up. And so typically I prefer the older teenagers. That's kind of the group that I connect with the most, my 15-year-old girls or 17-year-old boys. I like the teenagers because I like to use a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy or acceptance commitment therapy, DBT, things that they can think about their thoughts. I like that age. And but I do have some of my younger ones too.
Yeah, so we're parents now. If you had a parent or someone that you knew that was kind of hesitant about getting their kids services, what would you tell them?
I would strongly encourage, if there's something going on that the kid is struggling with. Like, I have some kids that, we talk through bullying, we talk through divorce, we talk through the death of a parent. Maybe it's social anxiety or the need to be perfect. I have a lot of young girls that have a perfectionist side to them that struggle with that. Or maybe it's anger and aggression towards their parents, or I don't know. I could go on and on and on. Foster care. And so it's kind of neat to just, as a parent, sometimes get to back up and have somebody else give the advice. Because sometimes, especially that teenage age, the parents can say it all day long, but until they hear it from somebody else, and maybe they listen a little bit better. And so sometimes that voice comes from a teacher or a coach or a social worker, but we don't want it to come from the wrong space. Like, sometimes we get advice that we don't need to hear. And so it's nice to just have a different person to connect with. And I have a lot of those teenagers where, they hear it from me, or maybe, me and the parents have talked about it in a different session, and then they hear it from me and it's received better. Or maybe they're fighting so much that they can't get a word through. And so sometimes I can be that mediator to just help them hear each other and hear what the other person is trying to get across, to settle down the family.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting. So going back to the a little bit about the education part of it, what does the ladder look like in the social work field?
So you're going to start out with a bachelor's, and once you get your bachelor's, you're going to go up to your master's. Once you get your master's, you're going to sit for some boards, and it's going to be the LMSW boards, Licensed Master Social Worker. Now, this is in Arkansas. Different states have different levels. So in Arkansas, LSW, that's your bachelor's. LMSW is your first master's test. Then you have 2 years of supervision. So you have 2 calendar years plus 4,000 hours working with, it's an LCSW, that's a licensed certified social worker. And so you have to sit under this supervisor for 4,000 hours. You're going to have weekly supervision with them face to face. I actually think they might have approved telehealth now because of COVID-19. But they didn't when I was. And at the end of that conclusion, you sit for another set of boards, your LCSW exam, which I am waiting to sit for. After coronavirus stuff ends, I will be sitting for those boards. And that's the highest level that you can get in Arkansas as far as your licensure.
Okay, so what do some of the jobs look like once you get to that highest level? What are some of the positions that you can take outside of a mental health therapist?
So you can become a supervisor. You could supervise a clinic, or you could be a professor. You could, teach in the college realm, or as an LCSW, you are independent. So that's a independent licensure, which means you could ultimately start your own practice and start accepting clients without working in a facility.
What would be some of the benefits of opening up your own client versus working for like an ERISA Health or Life Strategies?
Yeah, so a private practice, I think you have a little more freedom to specialize in something that you wanted to, or to be a little more selective with your clients or with your hours, or what you bill, I guess, is what you make. And so I guess you could determine your own work life, or what you wanted out of that. Whereas if you're going into social work, you need to know about productivity if you're going to work in mental health. And so productivity is, which I guess productivity is in any job. I mean, in any job, you're going to have to provide an amount of services. And so in mental health or in social work, I have to provide a certain amount of billable hours in order to say that I'm doing my job. And so wherever position you work in, you'll want to check in on that, on how much productivity are they going to require of me? How much of my week am I expected, or how much of my day am I expected to be doing a billable service, which would be a therapeutic service that you could bill for insurance, versus how much time would be spent in meetings or trainings or doing paperwork or things like that. And so owning a private practice, I don't know, because I don't own a private practice and haven't spent a lot of time with anyone who does. But I guess theoretically you would manage that yourself versus, working for an employer. They're mandating what you need to do.
Okay, so what would you say the biggest difference between an LMSW and an LCSW?
I think it's that independent licensure. You don't require supervision anymore. And the big door opening is, as an LMSW in Arkansas, you can bill Medicaid only. You can bill Medicaid, or you can bill the passes. That's a whole nother conversation on what the passes is. But the passes are the tiered Medicaid clients. But it's still Medicaid. Now, once you become an LCSW, you can start applying to bill for all the private insurances or Medicare. So that's, Cigna, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Medicare, all of that. Once you're an LCSW, you can start billing those, which opens up a lot of other clients that as an LM you weren't able to provide services for.
So a lot of the people that I've interviewed require continuing education courses. Is that something that you have to deal with in the mental health space?
Yes. So in social work in Arkansas, we have to have 48 hours every 2 years of continuing education. And so there's a lot of online things. You can have 20 online, and then the rest has to be face-to-face. Now, again, because of coronavirus, I think they're allowing a little bit more leniency if you're, having to reapply for your license right now. But every 2 years, you have to reapply or recertify your license, and you have to have those 48 hours logged in.
Okay, so you keep bringing up the coronavirus every now and again. So can you just tell us how this pandemic has been affecting your job?
Yes, so I think coronavirus has affected everyone and everyone's jobs probably. But for us, I don't know how it is everywhere, but for us, we have thankfully been able to move into a mostly telehealth process. So I'm 99% working from home, I'd say. I'm going in for a meeting, and otherwise I'm able to do, our Arkansas state governor has allowed either telehealth through video, or if the client is unable to have video because of internet or their technology, then we can do phone sessions. So most of my day is spent sitting at my kitchen table, calling clients, or doing video sessions with them.
So how has this affected your clients? Have you seen a change in the way that the clients are responding to this type of therapy versus face-to-face?
Yes. So, I know my experience has been that it makes me appreciate that time that I have with the kids. I actually read an article recently that it was basically saying, do you know how drained you feel after a day of telehealth? And there was a whole bunch of scientifically proven reasons why that trying to connect with someone on video takes so much more effort to keep people engaged. There's a lot less just things you can do with your hands or things that you can have that sweet silence that doesn't, whereas on the phone, it's like, hello, are you there? You got to say something real quick and you're just constantly glued to the screen. Whereas in my office, I can think of times that sometimes there's a little downtime where we're coloring or I'm playing some calming music and I hear people say, well, you can still do that on telehealth, but it's just different. And I think that one thing I wanted to say on this interview is that I hate that a lot of people are not trying to validate the difficulties, because a lot of people are saying, well, there's this and there's this and there's this that you can do. And there is. But I think it's fair to say that it's been really hard for social workers and other people too. But, we're all going through a global pandemic and we're overwhelmed and we're worried about our kids and our families. And we just had a tornado also. And so there's so much going on that we're trying to hold this safe and calm space for people that are out of control when we're pretty much out of control too. And doing it on a completely different platform and being expected things and pressured. And I think it's been really overwhelming. So I applaud the people that have continued to work really hard to treat people well, despite us kind of going a little crazy too.
Yeah. So what are some of the ways that you keep yourself sane and take care of your own mental health, especially during this pandemic?
Yeah. So I've done some baking and I've started photography. So I've gone out and I've bought a camera, and I'm just like the same thing I'm doing to my clients. I'm encouraging them to do some things for fun, be creative, draw, color, paint. I've got a girl that I talked to today that she does her makeup and she's not going anywhere, but whatever. I'm like, hey, girl, do your makeup. And so I think just anything, any expressive, creative arts that you can do kind of keeps your mind off of it. I've done a lot of cleaning, so that's been, actually super productive because that's keeping us safe. And I don't know, just trying to focus on the positives.
Yeah. So you mentioned telehealth a lot when you were giving us that spiel on the coronavirus and how it's affected your job. So what are some other times that you would use telehealth other than in times like this of an emergency?
Yeah, I actually wonder this. I'm not sure how the transition is going to be going back, if it's going to slowly fade back into face-to-face, or, I've had some that's like, man, this would really help me if we could do telehealth because of gas. I can't afford the gas to come back and forth. Or I could see some benefits to some of my clients that have a hard time getting in and out of the house, or because of transportation needs, that it would be beneficial. And so I hope that they keep it as an option for some people that need it. But I'll definitely appreciate getting back face to face where we can do some groups and crafts and, some more hands-on things with my kids too.
Yeah. So I know a little bit about some of this stuff because obviously we're married, and it's something you're passionate about. So we talk about it. Can you just explain a little bit about what it's like being with a patient or a client in crisis? So like, what's the crisis line? What's like, working crisis on a weekend? What's that like?
Yeah. So I was on the crisis team for a while, for about 6 months, I think. And so a crisis in mental health would be considered if someone is suicidal, homicidal, or actively psychotic, or for some reason, unable to be safe in their environment for some reason. But typically what happens is if it's during work hours, then they'll likely come in. If it's after hours, I know for us, for our clinic, we have an after hours crisis line, or people will often go to the emergency room or maybe be picked up by the police. So what happens then is that'll trigger a crisis screening being needed by a mental health professional. That could be a social worker or a counselor. And so when I was on the crisis team, I would go out in the middle of the night. I would be on call certain times, and I would go out in the middle of the night either to a jail or a police station or an ER, and I would do a screening to determine what needs to happen. Maybe this If it was an adult, maybe this adult needs to be in solitary, or be in seclusion room in jail instead of being in general population. And I would make my recommendation. Maybe they need to go to an inpatient facility because they need to get their medication stabilized, or they can't be kept safe in jail. Or maybe it's a kid to the ER, and maybe this parent just needs help safety planning and knowing what kinds of things need to be removed from the home, or how can we keep them safe? What coping skills could they use in that quick moment? And so that's a crisis. That's like, we don't have time to do a lot of therapy. We're doing a crash course real quick to try to keep this person safe as best we can. Now, from there, we encourage them to follow up with a therapist. And so that is when we can do a lot of those teaching those coping skills. And this is what I do with a lot of my kids, is we try to completely prevent that or head that off in the beginning by working on their mood, working on ways to express how they feel in a healthy way, ways to calm down when they get super upset. And so those are the things that I do with my kids in just a regular session.
Yeah, so we've had conversations many times that I don't think I would make a very good therapist, because I don't think I could stay cool and calm and collected during those high pressure situations. So what are some things that you do that allow you to remain calm in these high pressure situations?
Yeah, I don't know if it's like, you can't teach this in school. Like, you just don't learn in a textbook what it's going to be like walking into a jail, when I've never been in a jail in my life, walking in and having someone staring at you through, handcuffs and bars and telling you that whatever. And so I don't know. It feels like adrenaline kind of. It's kind of like that game time, like, okay, it's go time. And
yeah, I would say it would be the most amount of adrenaline that I think I've ever had is right before a track meet. So like right before the gun goes off and you're about to run the 100. It was, yeah, that's interesting that you compare that to that.
Yeah, it's like, okay, here we go. And it's like your brain just kind of zeroes in super quick on trying to help them feel calm and comfortable. You trying not to completely lose it. And I don't know, you're just on the spot, and it is kind of like adrenaline. And so if you're someone in social work who, I think there's a space for everyone, honestly. If you have a heart for it, like if you have a heart for helping someone in desperate need, I think you can find a space for that. Maybe you're an adrenaline junkie and crisis team is for you. Or maybe you're super creative and loving and mothering, and, maybe working with the littles is good for you. Or maybe you like that angry, hateful teenage spirit, and I think there's really a spot for everybody if you have the heart for it.
Yeah. So, what would you recommend that someone do if they're interested in this field? Is there a way they can kind of like job shadow somebody, or are there ways before you go ahead and commit to the program that you can kind of get your feet wet in that type of space?
I mean, I've had a lot of people just, reach out, message me on Facebook, or ask me questions. And I encourage that. I've had a few people job shadow me. You have to go through the right process, obviously, because if you're going to job shadow in social work, there's a lot of hoops to jump through because of confidentiality. And this is a really safe space for a lot of people. And so asking someone, hey, can someone sit in and just watch? That's not my favorite thing to do, because this is their safe space, and it's not that easy, I guess, to have someone sit in here while you're sharing your intimate parts of your life. This is probably one of the most safe relationships that they have. And so job shadowing is hard with social work. And so that's why I would encourage you to sit down with coffee with somebody or ask questions. You might not get to do the job shadowing, but don't let that deter you. If you call a company and they say no, just try to remember that that's likely for the sake of the clients. Kind of like that awkward moment when they come ask, hey, can we watch your childbirth? I said yes, but, a lot of people are like, no, but, sit down with with somebody for coffee, or social workers are helpers, and so they're likely gonna want to help you.
Yeah. It's definitely a very interesting job field for sure. And I've just been entranced listening to you talk about something that you're really passionate about.
There's so much about it, and people don't really get it. Like, people don't even understand what social work is.
Yeah. I mean, this has been helpful for me. I mean, I hear a lot about it, but you're even breaking it down a little bit farther that I think that the average person that's never even heard of a social worker could understand. So, do you have any mentors or any people that you are like currently looking up to in the space right now?
Yeah. So I hope that you always have mentors, no matter what field you're in, but you should always have someone that you're looking up to or learning from. And so I've had a lot of good mentors. Obviously, Samantha, who is my internship supervisor, is one of the greatest that I've sat under and gotten to watch. And then Gary was one of my supervisors, and Miss Heather was who I just finished my LCSW supervision with, and she was probably the one I was most afraid to sit under because of how intimidating and great she is. But I learned so much. So that's one of my advice. If you're wanting to go into social work, please do not go in if you're wanting to take the easy route. I encourage you to be with people who challenge you. And this is not the field to kind of cut corners and to cheat your way or to not do your best, because you're dealing with people's lives here. And I mean, you're dealing with people's lives in other fields too, but these are people that are trusting you with their most intimate details of their life and really desperately wanting help. And so I encourage you to be with people who challenge you, to check your biases, and to, just really be your best.
So, what would you say one of the biggest takeaways from your time at UALR was?
I would probably say that my biggest takeaway from school was to keep learning. I had a lot of really, really great professors that became people that wrote letters of recommendation for me, or that, I feel like I could still email or reach out to if I had questions. And so I think one is to keep a good network of people. Social work is not a standalone field. Like, you are going to have to either seek supervision on a case, you're going to have to cry about a case to somebody, or complain about something to somebody, or call the doctor and ask for questions, or call a mentor and ask, what in the world do I do? But people are ever changing. And so I don't think it's ever a field that you completely have mastered, because people are so diverse that, I mean, every day you could walk into a totally new situation that you don't know how to handle. So I think keep learning. Don't ever get cocky that you know it all, and then keep that good support network that you have people that you can call up when you have a question.
Yeah, so you're talking about people. What's it like being in there with this network of therapists?
Yeah, so the people in your clinic kind of become your team in a sense. Every week you'll likely have some sort of staffing. You don't share clients, but you may have clients that they have a brother, or they have the sister, they have the cousin, or especially in a small town, you get people that they know or that they have. And so we do a lot of working together on even just coming up with ideas, or sharing resources, sharing books. Whenever an intake comes in, just because I did the intake doesn't mean I keep that kid. If there's another therapist in the clinic that would be a better fit, then I may staff them to this other therapist. And so there's a lot of working together. And of course, our supervisor is constantly, answering questions or helping us figure something out, or, we're all collaborating together. Working with the doctors is a definite team effort, because they're prescribing the medication and recommending, the different interventions. And then we're trying to respond to that and giving updates on how the medication is working, or if it's not, or it's a definite team effort.
So you had an intern this past, I don't want to say semester, but first semester for him. What advice would you give someone that's about to be out there into the job field?
Yeah, so you're going to have an internship. Pretty much every social work program is going to require it. And so I would recommend that you maybe think of a field that you're interested in and go try that out for a year. And then maybe your next year, try something that you think you would never do. And, I unfortunately, well, I don't know if it's unfortunate, but I ended up doing 2 school-based positions for my internships, just somehow worked like that. And I'm not doing school-based. And so I feel like I probably missed out on learning more. But even in social work, I don't think there's any way you can really learn. There's still going to be something that you didn't get to see. But, try to be diverse and get uncomfortable.
So what do you want people to get from this podcast?
So I feel like I'm talking to several different groups of people, so I'm going to kind of talk to each one of them. So for my social workers, or not even just that, but just people that are the essential workers on the front lines right now, trying their best to figure this whole global pandemic and tornado and all this stuff out and trying to go about our normal lives. I applaud you and I commend you and I'm with you and I see you and I hear you. And so, give yourself some grace, even if you're feeling stressed and pressured. Take some time for yourself, drink some hot tea, take a bubble bath, go pick up a hobby.
Yeah, so you just named everything that you did. So
okay. Well,
I mean, it works for multiple people, but yeah, you did all those things.
Yes. So do your own thing, but be yourself. But give yourself some grace. I think it's a crazy, crazy time right now. And if you are still out, we're still having to send our girls to daycare, and a lot of people are home with their kids. And so it's been hard for me because I'm having to help families get used to this new adjustment of being home with their kids. And I want to be home with my kids. And so, I applaud you all for, we're still having to go, and I'm not having to actually go out and be face to face, but I'm still having to send my kids off somewhere so that I can be home and help people that are getting through this time. So I know other people are too. And so I applaud you and encourage you through this time. And I think we'll get stronger through this. For the next set of people, for the people that are listening and we're like, I think I want to be a social worker. I encourage you too that, if there's ever a time, if you've listened to this podcast and how the pandemic has affected and you're still like, man, I do want to do that, then I think you've probably got the heart for it and you should go for it. And then for people maybe who had no idea what social work was and, thought we were, I don't know, the people that come take your babies away. That's typically the crazy response that I hear. That's definitely not what we do. Unless it has to happen. But then, I encourage you to give some grace to your social workers. And if you or somebody that needs a referral or needs to see somebody, don't hesitate. That, these are people that care about you and that have your best interest at heart. And so there are adult clinics, children's clinics. Do not wait to get help. And, we're even doing sessions by phone or video right now. So don't let coronavirus stop you. If you're feeling depressed or anxious or just completely overwhelmed with all this stress, I think now is the greatest time as ever to just have some extra support.
Okay, so we're just going to finish up with some of the resources. Destiny has a lot of resources that we're going to link in the show notes, so you guys be on the lookout for that. And yeah, we did it. We got through an hour of this podcast with 2 girls still asleep. It's awesome. Destiny, thank you for sitting down with me. I know it's been kind of crazy around the house and work, but I mean, this was a really good interview and I'm excited for people to hear it. Do you have any last words that you want to tell the listeners out there?
Yes. So check out the links. There's going to be some links. I think I linked UALR, the School of Social Work. So if you're still interested after all this, there's other schools too, but I just linked my alma mater. I linked the Community Mental Health Center that I work at. And then we're going to attach the crisis line number just in case you ever need it. For parents, I know that it's a hard time to keep kids engaged. And so one of my favorite things I've done with my kids in telehealth is National Geographic Kids. They have a lot of fun games and quizzes and videos. And so educational websites like that can be fun. I think I linked childmind.org. I strongly recommend that for parents that have kids who maybe has ADHD or anxiety or depression or, disruptive mood, whatever. If you just want some parenting tips or some guides on how to manage that or what is that, I really love those resources. And then if you are struggling with anxiety, I think we all are, really, if we're honest, that this time is making a lot of us really anxious and overwhelmed. And so I linked my favorite workbook, and it's a self-help workbook, which means theoretically you could get it, read it, and do the skills yourself. But even though it's self-help, I use it in my sessions to where, I'm kind of guiding the person through it while we do it. And so I encourage you not to do it on your own. If you want someone to do it with you, go get a therapist and, maybe find someone that specializes in that style so that you can have someone to support you while you're going through it. But it has really good resources and coping skills and just things to help you cope with the anxious distress that we're kind of all facing right now. So I encourage you to seek help if you need it.
Well, this has been another episode of The Clever Angle. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys have any suggestions on who you guys want to see on the show next, just hit me up on Instagram or in the comments. You guys have a blessed day and go Red Wolves. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Thank you again for all your support. Be on the lookout for more content and have a good day.